The moment everything collapsed, she didn't even hear the glass shatter. It was strange how silence could feel louder than chaos. 1 second, she was standing at the top of a world she had spent decades building, and the next, it all slipped through her fingers like sand. Screens flashed red, phones buzzed with panic, headlines spread like wildfire, and within hours, the empire she had ruled with precision and pride was gone. Not weakened. Not shaken. Gone. Her name was once spoken with admiration, even fear. Now, it was whispered with pity. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that one small moment can change a life forever, take a second to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. You never know who might need to hear this today. She had been a billionaire. Powerful, untouchable, always 10 steps ahead. But power had blinded her. She trusted the wrong people, ignored the quiet warnings, and believed she was too big to fall. And when the fall came, it didn't give her time to prepare. Within days, her accounts were frozen. Within weeks, her assets were seized. Within a month, she was no longer the woman people stood up for when she entered a room. She was just another headline people scrolled past. And then came the loneliness. It was heavier than the loss of money. Heavier than the lawsuits, the betrayal, the humiliation. It was the silence of empty rooms, the absence of voices that once surrounded her. Friends disappeared. Partners vanished. Even family became distant. It was as if her worth had been tied entirely to her wealth, and without it, she had simply ceased to exist. She found herself sitting in a small, unfamiliar apartment on the edge of the city. The walls were plain, the furniture minimal, and the air carried a stillness she wasn't used to. No assistants. No schedules. No meetings. Just time. Too much of it. For the first time in years, she had nowhere to be. Days blurred into nights. She stopped checking her phone because there was nothing left to check. She avoided mirrors because she barely recognized the person staring back. Her confidence, once unshakable, had crumbled into something fragile and uncertain. And then, one morning, she decided to step outside. Not because she wanted to, but because staying inside felt like sinking deeper into something she might not escape. The building she lived in wasn't glamorous. It was ordinary. People passed each other without noticing. Life moved quietly there, without urgency or importance. And in that quiet, she felt invisible. That's when she noticed him. He was pushing a cleaning cart down the hallway, moving slowly but with purpose. His clothes were simple, slightly worn, but clean. His posture carried a quiet strength, and his face, though tired, held a softness she hadn't seen in a long time. He wasn't looking at her the way others had recently, with curiosity or judgment. He wasn't looking at her at all. And somehow, that felt different. She watched him for a moment longer than necessary. He stopped near one of the doors, carefully placing a small lunchbox on the floor before knocking gently. A child opened the door, smiling brightly, and wrapped their arms around him. The man bent down, hugging the child tightly, his face lighting up in a way that couldn't be faked. It was a moment so simple, so pure, it caught her off guard. She turned away quickly, unsure why her chest felt tight. Over the next few days, she kept seeing him. Always working. Always quiet. Always carrying that same calm presence. He didn't rush. He didn't complain. He just moved through his day with a kind of steady resilience that felt foreign to her. One evening, she found herself sitting in the lobby, staring blankly ahead. Her thoughts were heavy, tangled in regret and self-doubt. She didn't notice when he approached, but she heard his voice. It was gentle, careful, as if he didn't want to disturb something fragile. He didn't ask who she was. He didn't mention the news. He didn't treat her differently. He simply sat down nearby, giving her space, but not leaving her alone. For a while, neither of them spoke. And in that silence, something shifted. She realized it had been a long time since someone had been around her without expecting something in return. Days turned into weeks, and their quiet encounters became a routine. They didn't exchange many words, but there was an understanding that grew between them. A quiet recognition of shared humanity, stripped of titles and status. She learned that he was a single father. That he worked long hours to provide for his child. That life hadn't been easy for him, but he carried on anyway. He didn't have millions. He didn't have influence. But he had something she had lost along the way. Purpose. One afternoon, she finally asked him how he stayed so calm, even when life was clearly difficult. He paused, thinking carefully before responding. And what he said changed everything. He didn't talk about success or failure. He didn't mention money or status. He spoke about responsibility. About showing up, even when it was hard. About doing small things with care, because those small things were what built a life. He said that losing everything didn't mean you had nothing. It just meant you had to see things differently. The words weren't dramatic. They weren't revolutionary. But they were real. And for the first time since her world had collapsed, something inside her felt lighter. She began to look at her life differently. Not as something that had been taken from her, but as something that could be rebuilt. Not the same way. Not with the same priorities. But rebuilt nonetheless. She started small. She organized her days. She looked for ways to contribute, even in simple ways. She offered help where she could. She listened more. She observed more. And slowly, the emptiness began to fade. The man never asked for anything. He never expected anything. But his presence became a quiet anchor in her life. A reminder that strength didn't always look like power, and success didn't always come with wealth. One evening, she saw him sitting alone, looking more tired than usual. The weight he carried was visible in the way his shoulders slumped, in the way his eyes seemed distant. For the first time, she saw his struggle clearly. And without thinking, she sat beside him. Not as a former billionaire. Not as someone who had once been above everyone else. But as someone who understood what it felt like to lose everything. They didn't need many words. Sometimes, just being there was enough. If this story is touching your heart so far, take a moment to comment something positive below. Your words might inspire someone else who needs it today. Time passed, and something remarkable began to happen. She wasn't the same person anymore. The woman who once measured her worth in numbers and power had been replaced by someone quieter, more grounded, more aware. She found meaning in things she had once overlooked. In conversations. In moments. In connections. And one day, an opportunity came. Not a massive deal. Not a headline-making comeback. Just a small chance to help. She took it. And then another. And then another. Each step was small, but it was real. And it was hers. The man watched her transformation quietly, never taking credit, never drawing attention to it. But she knew. She knew that without that one moment, that one conversation, that one act of simple kindness, she might still be lost. He had changed her life in seconds. Not by giving her money. Not by solving her problems. But by reminding her who she could be. As her life slowly began to rebuild, she made a promise to herself. She would never forget what it felt like to lose everything. And she would never overlook the people who carried quiet strength in a world that often ignored them. Because sometimes, the people we least expect are the ones who save us. If this story moved you, if it made you feel something real, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And most importantly, leave a comment about what part touched your heart the most. Your support helps these stories reach more people who need hope. In the end, she didn't become the same billionaire she once was. She became something better. Someone who understood that true wealth isn't what you hold in your hands, but what you carry in your heart. And all it took was a single moment, and a single man who chose kindness when it mattered most.